Welcome back to week 9 of the DSR channel, and we are talking about the book Forgotten Realms: Heroes of Faerun, and it had some great faction mechanics for us, and lore and roleplay stuff. We're going over the mechanics first, and I'll do the roleplay and lore in a bit. And I want to talk about factions in general, right? So here is the table I created that summarizes the mechanical benefits of these factions. And it's a lot. Don't ruin your eyesight trying to read this off the screen. You can just download the PDF I created of this from the Google Drive that's linked in the description, and that'll save you a lot of pain and suffering, I think. So this just summarizes all that stuff. And there are two ways to handle factions. First is using the Renown score, and the second is this recommendation in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is you just throw away the Renown score and use the character level as a proxy, right? So character level 1 is Renown score 1 to get those benefits. They become a member. At level 3, character level 3, they now have the benefits of Renown 3, right? And 5, Renown 10, character, like so on. And if you have not run factions before, like you've never tried that in a campaign, I would recommend doing that. And if you do that, just run, and you're doing that because you're new to running factions, I would just run the mechanics as is. All right. So back to this, I would just run this as is. That'll give you, for your, the next campaign you're doing, that'll give you a nice feel for how they work, what kind of stuff you're going to have to figure out, what kind of stuff you're going to be up against, what you're going to have to deal with. And these mechanical benefits are all pretty lightweight in the volume of text and lightweight in the impact they have on the mechanics of the game. They are not lightweight on you, the DM, because there's so little text, frankly, right? They don't give you much guidance at all for how to do this. And let's just take a specific example of that. Cult of the Dragon, Renown 5, your benefit is you can hire Cult of the Dragon hirelings at half cost. Okay, easy to say, right? So your first player reaches Cult of the Dragon Renown 5, and they say, I'd like to hire some hirelings at half cost. Where do I find them? And immediately you're like, gee, I don't know. It never occurred to me, maybe, right? And the role play guidance we get on the Cult of the Dragon is that they operate as these secretive cells, right? Like a spy organization. Like there is no central registry of everybody who's a Cult of the Dragon, which seems to be the opposite of like looking up and getting access to Cult of the Dragon hirelings, right? You don't know who they are because they're secretive. I don't know. So you have to like reconcile that somehow and come up with a way. Maybe you just ask the player like, well, what kind of hireling are you looking for? And you ask your cult cell leader for a way to contact somebody who can do that, and then you make up how they might find that person, right? I want to find a smith who's a Cult of the Dragon, armor smith who can repair my armor, and I want to hire him at half cost or whatever. And you ask your cult leader, your spy, your cell cult leader, and they'll, hook you up, right? Maybe you want to like predetermine some things that the Cult of the Dragon hirelings are accessible in this community, this village, city, whatever it is. Maybe the Cult of the Dragon doesn't have access to everything. Or maybe you just roll a die. That's probably the easier way to go. Just like roll a 1d4 and it takes that many days before they get back to you. And then roll like another die with a 50% chance of, any die, right? And just roll on an odd number that hireling type you specifically asked for is not available in this community for the Cult of the Dragon. And an even number, they're like, yep, found it, and here's this person, and you can go find them here. But now you've got to go invent that location, whether it's a building or another village or a cave in the forest. You've got to create that location, and then flesh that out, right? And then, as you're having that conversation with the player, right, they're probably going to ask you somewhere along the line of, okay, well, what hirelings are available? And you're like, I don't know. I haven't heard of that maybe about in the rules. Well, there is a little tiny section in the Player's Handbook 2024 that talks about hirelings. And it's under the chapter that has like adventuring gear, weapons, and armor. Yep. And there's a subsection there that's called services. And under services, there's a paragraph called hirelings. And that's it. And that paragraph has this tiny little table that says a skilled hireling costs 2 gold pieces a day. An unskilled hireling costs 2 silver pieces a day. And a messenger costs 2 copper pieces per day. Okay, and you may not even have known that table existed. And here's how much guidance it gives you on what a skilled and on what those categories mean. Skilled is like it says like a mercenary or perhaps somebody who's proficient with a tool. That's what you got. Unskilled person has no skills at all. They can carry things for you, and that might be it. And messenger, no text whatsoever. But you can infer, like, I guess they will run to the next town and deliver a message for you or something like that. But literally no text. So how fast do they move? How far can they go? What's the chances they'll die before they get there? Um, otherwise, if they can only operate within the same village, then that's like 100 people. Why would I hire them for 2 copper pieces a day? I can just walk 50 feet to that building and just talk to those people. So there's a lot of these nuances that are just not fleshed out. And if you engage in it, it's suddenly left up to you, the DM, to flesh all this out, figure it out. Okay. So that's why if you haven't done this before, if you haven't engaged with factions before in your campaign, I recommend just running the faction mechanics as is. Don't do renown and just use the level as your proxy, right? Get a feel for that. Get a feel for how this all works together. Get a feel for what kind of decisions you're gonna have to make and things you're gonna have to flesh out. Okay. But if you're feeling ready for the next level, let's do that. All right. You've decided to use renown scores. You have chosen the way of pain. It's actually not that bad. Most of the extra work you're going to do actually isn't about the mechanics at all. Okay. Which is kind of strange, but let me explain this. So, and this is going to require a little bit of homebrew. So let's have a fight. No, let's talk about homebrew philosophy just a little bit. Like, I'm pretty sure if that discussion I had about uh, moon druids, while wild shapes should use the druid's proficiency bonus, and I think you can infer that you can interpret the rules that way as rules is written that you should do that. And I suggested that, man, if that had been a room, I think this is how it would have looked. Like there were people freaking out. There's like people wailing, screaming. One dude's crying. Like I'm pretty sure that's what it would have looked like if we'd had that discussion in person. Um, okay, so let's take a breath. All right, so I am a minimalist when it comes to homebrew. Okay, we're talking about tweaking things just so that they work. Okay, I do not. I'm not an advocate of like throwing out whole systems and just like creating your own thing. I am not an advocate of like overruling, changing base rules of the game. We're talking about tweaking content and pulling things together from different sources, different official sources or semi-official sources to make things work together. So I'm a minimalist, and the reason for that I think is that the propensity for us to homebrew and change significant things is probably the biggest hindrance to D&D because it raises that barrier to entry for everyone to join D&D, right? They can't just like read some of the books, the basic rules, and then like hop in. There's like, oh no, this DM does all of these things differently, which completely changes how you would build your character. And then you're like, okay, well, I finally figured out how to work with that DM, and now I'm playing in a different game with a different DM, and that DM has a completely different set of homebrew rules that completely changes the game, right? And now you've got to learn a new thing. And then players, if they muscle through that, yeah, they figure it out and they kind of learn to hang with it. But a lot of players just say, screw it. Yeah, this is too much work. I spent all this time and effort learning to play it this way, and then that DM changed it, right? And by the way, DMs, we're making extra work for ourselves. Because we do this, the next player who joins your group is going to come with all these assumptions about it works this way, and you're going to spend all this time explaining to them, no, it's this way. The more we all just achieve consensus about kind of how the game functions, the less work it is for everyone, and therefore the lower the barrier to entry for everyone, and therefore more D&D for everyone. Okay, all right. But content is different. You can tweak content that's different than the rules. So content doesn't change how the game functions. Content, and especially if you go for additive content, like don't remove content, just add some content. Like you add a feat, okay? As long as it's within the same parameters range of power of the other ones, great. That's not nearly as disruptive as saying, okay, Great Weapon Master works completely different now, and Dual Wielder works completely different, or Elven Accuracy is not allowed, right? You take things away, or you completely change existing things. That's a bigger impact than to just say, I'm going to add something. Okay, so let's if we can, please, I'll be minimalist on how much we change. Let's make it easier for all of us. All right. That being said, if you and your group never play with anyone else, then that doesn't affect you, and do whatever you guys like. Whatever is, whatever is fun for you all. If you're all having fun, then you're winning at D&D. So great. First up, if you are going to use the Renown score, you pretty much have to use downtime. Okay? The reason for that is, it's listed right there in the Dungeon Master's Guide. They've got those two reasons, and you kind of need to leverage both. Because if you only give Renown score from doing missions and quests, you're talking about you'd have to create 20 to 30 quests, side quests, that are optional for your players, but they could play to get to Renown 50, right? If they can't get to Renown 50, or as many as long as your campaign goes, right? However long that is. If you're going to stop at level 11, then you might be okay with like half that number of quests, because you'd want them to be able to get to at least Renown 25 if they're going to be at a level 11. So you're going to have to create a lot of content. And by the way, if you allow them each to join different factions, you've now multiplied the number of side quests you have to create by the number of factions they've joined. So that is a lot of content. By the way, not only content for you to create, that is a lot of content for them to play through. 20 to 30 quests is like 6 to 12 months of like real calendar time you playing this campaign. So for every faction that a player joins, and you're only going to give them side quests to raise their faction renown, you're talking about adding, I don't know, 6 to 12 months per faction to the length of your campaign. Now, if you all talk about it and everybody's down with that, great. But if people don't want to commit to like 4 or 5 years of your campaign on this schedule, you need to do something else. All right. And downtime is how you do that. Okay. Downtime, we're going to leverage downtime to cover like half of that, right? So that it doesn't add, so that gaining renown with a faction doesn't add 6 to 12 months to your campaign. Maybe it's like 3 to 6 months, depending on, again, what level your campaign is going to end. Okay. So downtime. First up, what the frick is downtime? And you may not be aware, but in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, so in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, there was like half a page on downtime, maybe a whole page on downtime. Pretty sparse. Okay. Xanathar's Guide to Everything went into great detail, like an entire chapter, 20, 30 pages on just downtime. Okay. It is excellent. And so maybe you're not aware, it's good stuff. And they did not reprint anything about downtime in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. There's nothing. There was even a page in the 2014 Player's Handbook on downtime, and once again, there is nothing on downtime in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Nothing that I recall. I'd have to go check that one again. All right, so Xanathar's Guide to Everything is your premier resource on downtime if you're looking for like official WotC resources, right? So let's read what downtime is. Downtime activities are usually tasks that usually take a work week. Ignore the 5 days. Like, just save yourself some time right now. It's a week. A week is a week. Okay, just trust me. Or longer to perform. These tasks can include buying or creating magic items, pulling off crimes, and working at a job. A character selects a downtime activity from among those available and pays the cost of that activity in time and money. You, as the DM, then follow the rules for the activity to resolve it, informing the player of the results and any complications that ensue. Great. So this is not active adventuring. This is what happens between adventures, okay? And when I first started delving into downtime, like a lot of parts of the game don't work if you don't do downtime. Like crafting doesn't work. Renown doesn't work without downtime. Bastions don't work without downtime. All these things require downtime. Piety doesn't work without downtime. And so I started delving into this, and I figured out, tried all of these different things, experimented with different ways to do it, play testing different things with my players. And I determined that, you know what? Downtime is just much better done outside of live play. Like, don't do it during live play. You should have like some kind of Discord for your games, even though you do live play, and then Discord's where you manage everything, schedules and whatnot. You also use it like your quest log, and then you have a channel that's dedicated to downtime, and you award your players downtime in that channel, and then you allow them to resolve their downtime in that channel, completely separate from live play. Okay, because you will inevitably have some players who are not interested in downtime at the moment you bring it up. during live play. And the first time you do it, it's likely that most of them will be like, I didn't have a plan. I don't know what I would do. So I guess I just carouse at a bar. And then they waste it. Okay. And it wasn't fun for anybody. It didn't add anything to the game. So the way you should first introduce it is, hey, and now you guys have downtime at the end of a session. You end a session, say, great, we wrap up this adventure, and now you made it back to town and you have 2 weeks of downtime. And then you end the session, and in the channel, start giving them resources about what activities are available, start talking with them about what they want to do with their downtime, and then resolve it. Okay. Completely separate, because not everybody has time to do this or cares to do it at the same time. So this allows everybody to suddenly go asynchronous and resolve it separately. Also, it helps keep people engaged and interested in your campaign between sessions. All right. Okay. And I thought I was a smarty pants for figuring out, yeah, you should do it out of session. Let's read the next line. Consider handling downtime away from the game table. For example, you could have the players pick their downtime activities at the end of a session and then communicate about them by email or text until the next time you next see them in person. If I had just read this, I would have saved myself like a year of play testing. So not a smarty pants, just a person who didn't read. And we probably all do that a bit. So hopefully these kind of like sidebars help you guys, save you some time and from making mistakes like I did. And we're going to call this kind of downtime the inline downtime, which means it happens in line with the campaign timeline, right? You finished a quest, you have a 2-week break before your next quest. That 2 weeks has to be resolved right now. You have 2 weeks to do something with 2 weeks of downtime, whatever it is. Go. And once the next quest starts, you can't go back and do that downtime. It's got to be resolved before the next quest starts. Okay, inline downtime. And you might ask, why does it matter what we call it? Isn't downtime downtime? Not for DSR. All right. Well, we're going to introduce this downtime concept called banked downtime, which is different than inline. Okay. And I did not get this idea, or I did not create this idea. I got it from Adventurers League. So once again, not a smarty pants. I'm just good at researching and remembering things and bringing them all together. Banked downtime, the way it works is you award it as a DM and they add it to their character sheet as a resource that they can spend at any time later. And the way I usually do it is you can spend it out of a session. You cannot spend it in the middle of a session. Just out of a session, we'll do that and resolve it. But at any time, they can resolve it, through Discord, right? Or whatever you're using for messengers. Okay, so it's banked. They have a bank of it. And you might ask yourself, like, well, that's not intuitive. How does that work? You're right. It's not intuitive at all. That's not how reality works. It's just the multiverse of madness. And when the players are kind of like maybe mentally struggling with, okay, well, I've made it this far in this adventure. We've spent a month doing this, and all of a sudden I'm going to spend like 3 months of downtime. How does that timeline work? You just say, I don't know. You figure out. You tell me how that resolves. You tell me how to reconcile that, right? Don't be afraid to put when it comes down to role play reconciling things, especially with their characters, put it back on the player. Be like, what do you think? How do you think that works? Like maybe we retconned it. Maybe that's part of your backstory that you were working on that and it just now finished, right? Which is, by the way, in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, that's how they recommend you handle bastions, right? You don't at level 5 start building your bastion. At level 5, you suddenly have a bastion and it's fully functional. And they just say, explain it as if you'd been working on it for however long previously and it just now finished. Okay. That's how you reconcile it. Okay. Banked downtime from Adventurers League. Okay. So next we're going to award downtime. And this is for the banked downtime specifically. Inline downtime makes more sense to award, right? That's where you finish an adventure and you're just going to give them like a week of downtime or however long you think is appropriate, right? So that's one way to award. The other way to award is for the banked downtime. I've tried a lot of different ways to do it. This formula is what I found works best that I've done. Okay, you might have something better. If you do, let me know. Like, let's improve things together. But the way I do this is every PC who's in your campaign at the end of your real world calendar week, right? You usually play once a week or whatever it is. At the end of that week, you pick a day. It doesn't matter. It could be Saturday, Sunday, whatever works for you. It could be right after the session. Your weekly scheduled session. Just say right after that, you're going to award downtime, and you award them 1 week of downtime per PC level at that time. So every real world calendar week that passes, you give them 1 week of in-game downtime equal to their PC level. So if they're level 3, you give them 3 weeks that week. And if they're level 5, they now get 5 weeks that week. Okay? So it starts growing as their character levels up. And I think you can explain that by, yeah, the higher level you are, the bigger, more epic adventures you're doing, and the more time you're taking off in between, because you're no longer doing these little, small missions and tasks, right? Like you don't, that's not for you. That's for the low level adventurers. You're doing the big things, and there's just more time between the big things that happen in the world. Okay, so I think you can easily reconcile that. But then, and if you don't play that week, award this anyway, right? Because some or all of your players, hopefully everybody, will be disappointed you're not going to play that week. So award this anyway, and this gives them a little bit of a way to play the game, keep playing the game. I got some downtime. I may spend it this week. They work with you on Discord to reconcile it. It allows them to keep playing, even though you didn't play that week. Or let's say you played that week as a group, but one person couldn't make it. Okay, still give them the downtime, and that one player who didn't make it can still do a little thing to keep playing the game. Okay, helps people stay engaged with your campaign, and it's fun. It's fun. And you put this in the notes section of your character sheet, whether it's on D&D Beyond or on paper or however you do this, just in the notes. Unless the app you use for your character sheets actually has a section for it. D&D Beyond doesn't, which irritates me because it's supposed to be official WotC, the official WotC app. They publish these books. Why can't they put everything they publish in their books into their app? All right. You just put it in the notes, track it there. You have this much available downtime, and when you spend it, deduct it. Maybe log what you spent it on or whatever. That's an, I don't know if the log's necessary. Okay. Now, the next thing you have to do if you're going to give them downtime is you got to give them some options to spend it on. If they only have one option, then it's not really a decision, right? If you can only spend it on Renown, then why are you doing this? All right. If you're going to do it that way, then just probably don't use the Renown system, right? If there's no decision to make, that's what this game is about. It's about making decisions and consequences, right? Opportunity cost or consequences of your decisions. So you got to give them some options to spend downtime. And let's start with just some easy options, okay? First up, increase their faction renown, right? The formula we got from the Dungeon Master's Guide 2024 is it costs 10 days times your current renown score to gain one more renown. Okay, so if you're at renown 1, it costs you 10 days to get to renown 2. If you're at 2, it costs you 20 days to get to 3. And if you're at 3, it costs you 30 days to get to 4. Okay, this adds up real fast. So this is a good way to start raising the renown at first, and you just explain it like you guys are just, you're being messengers for the faction, you're washing windows for the faction. It's menial kind of things, right? You don't need to go into great detail over it. But it gets pretty hard to raise renown this way pretty fast, right? Once you're at renown 10, you need 100 days of downtime to raise it to 11. And that is weeks and weeks of downtime, right? That's 14 weeks, 16 weeks of downtime to 15 weeks of downtime is what you'd need to get from 10 to 11. So this is why you mix and match this with quests, okay? So they'll do a few quests that helps them engage with the faction and feel like it's a real breathing thing and not just some additional bag of mechanics they put on your character sheet. You want them to engage. You want them to learn about the faction. You want them to feel like they are doing faction things and behaving like the faction would. Maybe if you're a Cult of the Dragon, you're I don't know, doing evil rituals with little, baby dragons or undead baby dragons. I don't know. Right? Give them some flavor from these quests. That's what you're doing with the quests, is give them engagement and feel like their engagement with the faction is meaningful and has impact on the campaign story, right? Okay. Next option, crafting mundane and magic items. Again, just use the rules straight as is. Don't mess with them, right out of the Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook. Works great, just fine. Use those rules as is, and they're going to spend downtime to create those things. It covers all of it. It's got all you need to do that right in this one book. There was a bunch of rules in Xanathar's Guide for everything. For crafting items, don't use those. Just use the 2024 Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. They're easier to use. They're less complicated, more succinct. All right, just stick with the latest stuff. Okay, next one. Training with a tool or a language. We're back to Xanathar's Guide to Everything. One of the activities was training, and you could just learn a new tool proficiency or a language. And the way it worked was you would spend 10 weeks minus your int modifier, maximum of 10. So if you have a negative int modifier, it doesn't go to 11. It stays at 10, okay? But if you have a positive intelligence modifier, like you got a +4 or 5, then it takes you 6 or 5 weeks to do this training, and you're learning a new tool or a language, okay? Now, don't offer them language training if you don't really use languages in your games, Okay, if you like just hand wave it and like, oh, you can speak to anybody, even if the stat block says they only know Goblin and no one in the party knows Goblin. If you just hand wave it, then don't offer them language training, because you're now offering them an option that will be a trap, a waste of their downtime that they're spending. Okay, and if you don't play with tools, same thing. Don't offer that as an option. Okay, just stick to the crafting and the faction. Like if you don't play with tools or languages, just go with A and B. That's good enough, probably, at least to start with. But tools are quite powerful, quite useful if you read all the rules and what they can do for you, right? If you have an ability check that uses a skill and a tool, right in the 2024 Player's Handbook, it says, rules is written, if you're proficient in both, you roll with advantage. Did you know that? Maybe not. That's a great way to use tools, right? If you have an ability check that uses sleight of hand and thieves tools, you're going to roll that with advantage. And I want you players to know that too, so that you can remind your DM, hey, by the way, can I have advantage because I'm proficient with both? Yep. It's as much about you helping the DM as the DM is kind of trying to run the game world for you. But remember, be cool about it. If they're like, nah, not this time, don't be a jerk, right? Just be cool. Okay, there you go. Downtime. You're set with downtime. This is a great way to start off with downtime. You're level 1 downtime user now. Okay, and now you're ready to talk about side quests. Like I said, plan on 10, if you use downtime and side quests, plan on 10 to 15 side quests per faction. And do not pre-create all of these. You will, right? Your players are not going to choose every faction. I mean, even if you have 6 players, there's 8 factions in this book alone. They can't choose all 8. And if you pre-create all of these, you will have wasted a bunch of time and effort. All right. Second, it goes against like every role play bone in my body, right? And the role play wolf. But encourage all of your players to join the same faction. I always like, my instinct is I want to give them individuality. I want to give them opportunity to differentiate themselves from the other players, to lean into the story of their character, and a faction, and having a different faction than the other players really speaks to that. But and I've done this multiple times, and every time I do it, I regret it. Because here's what happens, right? First up, if you let them join 5 different factions, you now need to create side quests for 5 different factions. Okay, so you've quintupled the amount of work you need to do for this faction system. 2, your players are not going to engage in all of them equally, right? Like some players are going to be more interested in faction, and some others maybe are not. And then that player, whenever it comes up time to do are we going to do a side quest? Should we vote on a side quest? That player is going to always win because maybe everyone's equally interested, but that player is just the pushiest or the loudest. And that one pushes, and everybody else is kind of like, just whatever. And then that person is the only one who gains renown. So they're at like renown 25 by level 11. Everybody's at renown. Everyone else is at renown 8 by level 11. Or worse, 3 or 4 of your players join one faction and the other 2 oddballs do not. They have different factions, different from each other and different from the main group. And then when you're voting about what side quest to do, the larger group always wins because there's 3 or 4 votes there for that faction, right? And these other, they'll try to be cool probably sometimes. If you don't have people who are doing this at your table, maybe, revisit the people you're playing with. But they'll probably be cool and say like, oh, well, those guys need a turn. But they're going to get a turn once every 5, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 side quests. This group is still going to advance faster, and these ones are going to be left behind, struggling, and then they're going to get discouraged, and it's not fun, and why are we doing this faction thing? And maybe they just give up on the faction, okay? Which is not how you want anybody to feel about factions. If you're going to do factions, make it fun and enjoyable for everyone. And the best way to do that is have all the players join one faction. Yeah. Maybe next campaign they can join a different faction. And if they're all like, well, this one likes Cult of the Dragon, this one likes Purple Dragon Knights, say, I get it. Kind of explain what I just explained, guys. Like, it's just not going to go well for all of us, right? Because every 10 to 15 quests is going to add like 3 more months to your campaign. So if you do 5 factions, that's 5 times as many side quests. So you're talking about adding 15 months to your campaign. Like, just explain kind of these details and be like, look, you just really need to all join one. And you can come up with in-world reasons, like for, whatever reason. You guys can discuss it as a party. You can have them explain why they all decided to, even though there's a necromancer and a paladin and a rogue, why they all joined the Purple Dragon Knights, right? Have them help you explain why they did that. And I promise you, it's just going to go easier for everybody if they're all one faction. All right. Next, you've got to decide different sizes of these quests. So you can have a task, which try to make it like an hour or less of live game time, and you give them 1 renown for that. So these are like small quests. Go here, talk to this person. Think of like, you know, an MMO, right? Hey, take this thing to that guy in the next village over there and deliver it to him. A delivery quest, or go get the thing, bring it back, or find this node, or my, you know, son got jumped by some brigands in the forest. He dropped the bag of beans and he ran away. He's fine, but I need you to go back and get the bag of beans and bring it to us, right? Short tasks. In fact, what I just described might even be too long for that. Okay, but try to make it an hour or less of live game time. Then small size quests, make it the size of about one session, 3 hours or however long your sessions are, and give them 2 renown for that. Okay, and then large quests, it might be multiple sessions, and if it's if it's 3 sessions, I would give them more than 4 renown, right? Because you want it to be commensurate with the amount of time, live game time, they're investing in it. Yeah, I would probably give them more if it's that big of a quest. Okay, you want it to come out to about 2 renown per session, so that it's equal to the small quests. And if you, like me, are not a natural virtuoso at just creative storytelling, writing your own stories and coming up with your own things, you might be thinking like, holy crap, how do I write that many adventures? I recommend you don't write them, right? There are so many adventures published, and a lot of them are anthologies, which means they're a collection of small adventures. Just use those. It's what I do. It works great. My players don't even know, right? The players aren't going to know if you wrote it or if somebody else wrote it, and they probably don't care either, right? So go for what's less work for you and use adventure anthologies, okay? I'm going to list a few here. This is certainly not exhaustive. I use third-party anthologies as well. There's like a good one from Grim Hollow I've been using. But Waterdeep Dragon Heist is great because in chapter 2 of that book, there's a whole section that has like task-sized quests, like they're things that could be done in like an hour. And so they could be doing multiple of those. And those are great ways to start somebody's engagement with a faction, right? So when they first start up, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist phrases that in a way that says at level 2 you would get this quest from this faction, at level 3 you would get this quest from this faction. Now you don't have to use those factions that way and those quests with those specific things. You can just repurpose them, use them as insight, and repurpose them to fill in what you're doing for your players. Okay, Candlekeep Mysteries is another one, great anthology, and all you do is change the adventure hook, right, to just match what you need it to be. Okay, Candlekeep Mysteries, the first one is like a hook about somebody's missing, or no, your town has got a plague, and you've traveled to Candlekeep looking for a sage who has information about this plague that could help you. And when you arrive at Candlekeep, that sage is missing, right? That's the adventure hook. Okay, easily repurpose that to be Purple Dragon Knights, right? Cormyr is suffering from a plague, and you've been sent to this other library to find a sage, and boom, same adventure. You just tweak the adventure hook, and you've still got what you need for your faction. Okay, this is DM. My players, close your ears. This is too many secrets for you guys. They're gonna think I'm not the genius DM that I am, and I'm just really stealing from all kinds of places. Keys from the Golden Vault, another excellent anthology. Quest from the Infinite Staircase, great. Journey through the Radiant Citadel, also great. Like I said, I use others. I just didn't want to list everything here because it's too much. But those are all organized by like level 2. So that way you don't even have to pre-create these adventures or pre-read them even. When your players are level 7 and they say, hey, we're ready for a side quest, and you say, and I don't know, whatever their faction is, Purple Dragon Knights, you just go and look at the level 7 quests, scan the contents, and decide, does this seem like something I could repurpose to be a Purple Dragon Knight quest? And just scan through the level 7 quests. There you go. 30 minutes of work. And by the way, I enjoy reading the quests, so it's kind of an enjoyable 30 minutes anyway. All right, we're almost there. So you've now know how to like make factions work, you know how to run them, you know what you're going to be up against, what kind of decisions you're going to be making, and hopefully you've now been armed with some resources for how to handle all this stuff you're going to be dealing with, right? Excellent. And the way you want your players to engage with your factions is that you want them to come for the flavor, right? Do you want them to join the Purple Dragon Knights because they like the idea of what the Purple Dragon Knights represent? They like their lore in the world, all that kind of stuff. They come for the flavor, but you know what makes them stay? The mechanics, right? If they start working and investing real time, right? We're talking sessions of gameplay. They're investing real time plus time outside of sessions, working on their downtime, investing all of this time to build up their renown with their faction. And if the mechanics are lame, they're going to quit. They're going to quit the faction and be like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this anymore, right? And I'm pretty sure if you run Renown and make them do all this work to get it, and you use those mechanics that were in the book, in this book, that's what's going to happen. They're going to be so disappointed by those mechanics. It's going to feel like I'm putting in all this work and time, and while I enjoy the story, hopefully, the mechanical results of it are not worth this investment. Let's just get back to the main campaign and forget about the faction. I'm pretty sure that's the result. It's not about a matter of if, it's a matter of when, how long they make it before they give up on it, because those mechanics are just less than lackluster, is how I'll put it. Okay, so how can we create good mechanics while still being a minimalist homebrewer? We're going to call it a tweaker, right? That sounded better in my head than it did out loud. We're a homebrew minimalist. So we're going to just leverage other things that are already in the game. We're not going to create new rules, right? Because new rules is extra work for us and for the players, right? They're going to have to learn our new rules, remember our new rules. They're also going to know that and experience that when they go to play with other DMs, your new rules don't exist with that DM, right? We want to avoid those things. So reuse rules, okay? Boom, all right? Enhanced mechanics, minimal overhead. Renown 3, they get a new tool proficiency on top of the mechanics already listed in this book, okay? So this is in addition to. Renown 5, a bonus skill proficiency. Renown 10, a bonus origin feat. Renown 25, a bonus general feat. Renown 50, an epic boon. Yes, an epic boon. Okay? Now remember, I recommend that you level lock these so that they can't get to Renown 5 or Renown 10 until they're level 5. And they can't get to Renown 25 until they're level 11, and they can't get to Renown 50, or they can get to that Renown, but they don't get the benefits until they're also that level, right? So level 17 for Renown 50. And it was recommended in the older books and kind of implied with that table in the new Dungeon Masters 2024 guide. It's unlikely that they will reach these Renown levels at the Renown levels of 25 and 50 before those character levels. But Renown 10, they might make it before level 5, okay? And depending on what level they get to, an extra origin feat is either perfect right at level 5, or it can be problematic if they get it too soon. Like it's just too much too soon, too much power, right? But a skill proficiency is not going to unbalance the game. A tool proficiency is not going to unbalance the game. So it's kind of that Renown 10 at level 5 is the one you got to look out for. All right. And now you may be thinking, oh, so I need to create new feats and tools? No, we're going to reuse them. And which ones should we reuse? How about the ones that are associated with the background associated with that faction? Yes. All right, so we're going to just steal that tool. So Dragon Cultist, the tool your proficiency you're going to get for free at Renown 3 is Calligrapher Tools. Boom. All right, which skill proficiencies? How about you get to choose Deception or Stealth? Easy. How about what origin feat? Let's just give them Cult of the Dragon Initiate. Nice. What general feat? How about the one that was tied to Cult of the Dragon feat? Dragon Scarred. Work is done for you. It's already in the book. You didn't invent anything. It's flavorful. It already matches, right? Perfect. And by the way, don't remove the backgrounds that give these things too, okay? Still allow that to be an option for your players. So if they're going to have that as an option, then what do? Just add some more choices, right? And the way I would do this, you can do however you want. The way I would do it is pick some things that give them at least 2 more options for each of these, and pick things that are thematic and make sense. And I would only let them pick these if they already have the ones from the background, the origin feat, and the general feat. If they have those, then they can pick these things. But if they don't have those, right, then they have to take those first. So if somebody already took the Dragon Cultist background and already has those proficiencies, great. Allow them to choose one of Weaver's Tools or Alchemist Supplies. And if somebody already has, again, that background and has those proficiencies, allow them to choose Arcana or History, one of, right? Remember, they only get one of these choices. And therefore, if they already have the Cult of the Dragon Initiate, Origin Feat, let them choose Magic Initiate Cleric or Wizard, because there's a lot of clerical ritual, worshipping type thing with the Cult of the Dragon, and a lot of arcane magic type thing. So let's just let them choose one of those. Sounds flavorful. Now, you can do whatever you want. This is just shooting from the hip for me, okay? So this may not be what you like. That's fine. Choose what makes sense for you. General feats, how about Elemental Adept? Because the Cult of the Dragon has a lot of lore about how they are tied to different, there's like sects within the dragon cult. who are tied to different colored dragons, blue dragons, red dragons. So they kind of so we're going to kind of lean into this like elemental nature of the dragon by elemental adept, right? Sure. And also they're pretty shadowy. They're, they're not really good guys. I mean, it's literally a cult. Like you have to pay tithing and you can't leave. That's the lore. You're not allowed to leave. And if you try, they're going to come after you. So it's like really cultish. So let's give them Shadow Touched as an option. Okay. Which epic boon? How about Boon of the Soul Drinker? If you read that one, it's pretty flavorful for Cult of the Dragon. There's a lot of like the Cult of the Dragon lore is that one of their main goals is they're trying to create Draco liches, and the way you do that is you take the living body of a living dragon and you like take the dragon's soul that they worship and somehow they transfer through a ritual that dragon's soul, that the one that they worship, into the body of this one, and that one takes over this one's body. So like an evil thing, but you're like transferring souls. And I'm sure I probably got some of that wrong. So, Cult of the Dragon lore buffs out there, help me out in the comments and correct everything I just said. But they feel pretty strong that there was like soul transfer things happening. Okay, so Boon of the Soul Drinker, sweet. And if you want to play with Bastion facilities, what do you do with the Bastion facilities, kind of mess that they gave us in this book? You know what? None of those are very good. Just let them all have the Bastion facility listed with a faction from this book, Heroes of Faerun. Just let them have it at level 5. Doesn't matter what it said in the book, and just let them have it as a bonus, not instead of. So they still get their 2 choices, and then they get their faction facility just as a bonus on top. Just let everybody have it. None of those are going to unbalance the game in any way. They're all really poor. All right. Now, there's definitely facilities that would unbalance the game if you let them have too many of them, but these ones are not those, right? Like the storehouse is one you don't want to give out any free storehouses. Like the arcane study, the workshop, the smithy, the garden, the greenhouse, like the scriptorium. Those are the ones you'd want to be careful of. Okay. Not the ones that they created for these factions. Those are they're all right. That's all I'll say about those. Okay. So you just give to them level 5, even though it said, for the Dragon Cultists, it said the Dragon Cult archive said level 13. Just forget about it, right? They just get it at level 5 if they want it. And it's an addition to what they already had, okay? That is not going to unbalance your game, not in the least. Not in, people may not even notice that they have this Bastion, okay? And you just do that for every faction now, right? Okay, and so I've done like my example, spent an hour doing this, probably longer. It was fun. Doing this for every one of those 8 factions. I put it together in a table, and yes, this will make your eyes bleed if you try to stare into it. It's a PDF that you can download, and all I did was take the table that I had before and add the new options that I suggested, and you can see that there's like 2 rows of it, right? So the one that's like Cult of the Dragon, you see that the Calligrapher Supplies is the first one recommended because if they don't already have those, then that's the one they get. And Deception is Stealth, the one from the background, if they don't already have those, then they have to take one of those. And Cult of the Dragon Initiate, if they don't already have that, that's the one they have to take. And then the options that are, if they already have it, they can take those other options, are below it, and those ones are not bolded, okay? So it looks like a lot. It's hard to look at, but it's a lot of data. And I love data, and I like to put it all on one screen so you can visualize it all at the same time. So I recommend just getting the PDF from my Google Drive and save your eyesight. But there you go. Now you have the mechanics, some solid mechanics that players are going to be excited about as they keep leveling up all along the way, to keep moving forward with their faction, okay, and keep investing in all of this this time, real world time and energy to raise their renown, because that epic boon is going to be exciting, right? These are designed at every step to be like, ooh, at my level, that next step is exciting, and the next one, ooh, at that level, that step is exciting, okay? This is going to keep them excited about things. And the final piece of advice is do not show them this table to start with. Okay, whatever you come up with, whether you use my table or you create your own thing, don't introduce your factions to your players by showing them that. Okay. The one thing I've really learned is you want them to come for the flavor, and if you show them the mechanics first, flavor goes out of their brains, and they are now just analyzing and evaluating the factions based on mechanics. Or most of them will do that, not everyone. Most will do that, and when they view it that way, just like they do with their player characters, which is why I recommend do not view everybody don't view your character you're making as a bag of mechanics. view it as a real character first with an identity, and then add mechanics so it's good enough to do what you want it to do, right? Same thing with faction. Do not show them this table. Introduce in game, have them meet members of the faction, have them experience, different, like maybe tasks for them, small quests, get to know them and what they're like. And then when they're ready to learn more about the factions and engage, give them a big lore dump on it, which I would probably do out of session. Like, nobody wants to sit there while you monologue for 5 minutes, okay, or longer. Give them chunks of lore text to read in your Discord or whatever you use out of session. End of session, be like, and then you end the session where they first start expressing interest in the factions. So you finish that session. After that session, you'd be like, here's your lore dump. Here's a lore dump on the Cult of the Dragon. Here's a lore dump on each of these. Maybe give them one paragraph each. And then as they express interest in this or that faction, give them more on that faction and make it all lore dumps and make them choose their faction based on the lore alone, based on the lore and the role play of the faction. And only after they've chosen and signed up for it do you then show them the mechanics. That is how I would do it, okay? Because now they made this decision based on the role play, and they're going to be role play mentally invested in this faction. They're going to be invested in what the faction means, what they stand for, and how they affect the world, okay? And then the mechanics are just a nice benefit to keep them going. If you reverse it, then they're not going to engage with your faction, and they're not going to care about how it impacts the world. They're not going to engage in a role play way with it. They're not going to care about the NPCs of it. They're just going to be focused on the mechanics that they selected first and trying to get to that because they've planned their build for that feat at that level, or whatever it is. And they're just focused on getting there, and they're going to, it's just not going to work well. Probably. I mean, maybe you'll have a different experience. I've tried this a few times, and when I switch to they do not get to see the mechanics until after they pick, that made all the difference for my groups, my campaigns. So that's a strong recommendation there. And as a reminder, yeah, so we're talking 3 books here: Forgotten Realms, Heroes of Faerun. That's where where we started. Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica actually has more details and ideas and inspiration for factions than this book does, than the Forgotten Realms book. Okay, this one, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, is faction and renown gold. All right, almost the whole book is about factions and renown. So check that one out. Another source of inspiration that I used is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There's a section in there on patrons. There's a patron for your party. Like maybe your party works for a wizard, and the wizard gives you all your quests and things like that. And it's pretty interesting. It's got some good ideas. It's got some ideas for mechanics, ideas for lore and role play kind of ideas. And you know what? It's kind of weird to have a faction and a patron, and they kind of serve the same function. So I just merged them together, and that's where I got some of the ideas for some of the mechanics that I use is from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and some of the inspiration. So read that too if you're looking for ideas on how to make better factions or how to improve the existing factions or to homebrew your own factions. So, all right, thanks for watching. Hope to catch you next time. And remember, everybody be cool with each other when you're playing D&D. It's for fun. Okay.